All right, cool. Welcome back to the Hanji Help podcast. I am your host, Raxstar. It's been a 7 months hiatus, but I am back now, and I ain't gonna back down. Anyway, listen. So the reason why I feel like every time I start this podcast, I have to go through the reasons why I haven't been doing the podcast, and to be honest, it's just been a really, really strange year. I think last year was super weird, and this year has been super weird just because of what's going on in the world and how that's got us. And I suppose it's happened to a lot of people, but myself in particular, just analysing myself a lot more, what I'm doing, trying to figure out, like to be honest, feeling very lost. I've spoken to a lot of people and they felt very similar. The foundations of our society, of how everything functions, has changed, and it's led us to reevaluate who we are as people as well. And give me 1 sec. I just need to make sure that this is recording, because okay, yeah, it is recording. I'm gonna keep this in, but yeah, I just had to make sure that it wasn't, because I didn't want to redo this podcast again like I had to do once before. Okay, so where was I? We were talking about, the foundations of the world have changed. The foundations of the world has changed. Society has, gone through a massive change. So it's forced us to kind of forced me to reevaluate where I stand in the world, what I'm doing, why I do what I do. Because sometimes we just end up sleepwalking through the decisions we make and the actions that we take as well. So I found myself doing that, and because of that, I was in a space where I didn't really know what I was doing. And to do a podcast by myself amongst that, I just felt like, I don't know what I'm doing, so what am I going to talk about? Even topics that I could talk about, I just felt like I don't really know. I wasn't centered myself, so how could I come to this subject or talk to other people about these things when it wasn't something that I was centered in myself, where I could come from a place of knowing what my own thoughts were and knowing what my own opinions were on things. So there was a lot of time that I spent kind of hibernating, I suppose, just trying to figure that out. And musically as well, I've just been starting and stopping a bunch of different things. I've gone back and looked at a bunch of things that I've done, and I'm not kind of there anymore where I was when I wrote that stuff or when I recorded that stuff. So that stuff's probably I'm not gonna be going in that direction moving forward. So it's just gonna kind of end up on the cutting room floor. One thing that I did want to talk about was another reason why was because the previous episode that I did was with Sachin, and if you haven't seen episode 5, I would highly recommend you checking that out. Me and Sachin had a great conversation, and that particular podcast kind of got me. I caught the bug for trying to have conversations on this podcast rather than just having me talking for like 40 minutes. I kind of thought, okay, it'd be great, because I wanted to bring people on the podcast and have conversations with guests on this podcast. That was always the goal. But obviously, so with Sachin, after I had that podcast episode with Sachin, I decided, okay, moving forward, I'm going to have more guests and more guests. And the reason why I actually started doing the podcast alone was because I didn't want to rely on anyone else. More so guests rather than people to help me, but guests. It's basically you're producing a podcast is not easy. Any type of involving other people in any creative process that you're doing is not easy. And with the podcast, it's still something very new. It's still something that I'm learning about, equipment wise and whatever. Having a guest, I mean, I'm lucky that I had, shout out Kai. Kai is there That's where we recorded, his studio is where we recorded the episode with Sachin. He's there to help me, so I'm really, really appreciative of that. But just organizing people, especially I work, the people that I want to have conversations with, they're busy, they've got their own things going on as well. So it kind of, a part of that and having to organize that made me be more complacent and more lazy and be like, okay, I'm not going to do another episode because I'm waiting for so-and-so. When they're free, then I'll do that next episode. Anyway, it made me lose sight of the reason why I started this podcast in the first place alone, was because when I'm doing it alone, I only need to rely on myself. And I can get this done myself. I can record it, I can edit it, I can put it all out myself. And I feel like I've kind of turned a corner in feeling lost quite recently, and because of that I feel more inspired to get back on this and get back on the podcast as well. So there's that. I know I've said it before, like I'm gonna be more consistent with it, so I don't know, we'll see how that goes. It was really nice getting feedback from people, messages, even in person, people asking me when's the next podcast episode coming out, because sometimes it feels like, and this is another thing to do with the toxicity of social media. I've had so many conversations, by the way, this past week about this whole stuff, so it's all fresh in my mind, and it's kind of also pushed me to get another episode done. But I feel like my initial thought, before I got sidetracked talking about the other stuff, was I was going to say that I felt like nobody was listening, and there are people listening. Social media kind of forces you to compare numbers and statistics and likes and followers and views and all this stuff with everyone else. You're constantly looking at other people's statistics, and in the field of creativity, a lot of things are rewarded based on statistics. Oh, you've got so many so-and-so views, or you've got so-and-so followers, that allows you this privilege, or that allows you this. So you can get caught up in that, and everyone does. So many people do. I've got caught up in it. So many people I know have got caught up in it. But once you kind of take a step back and realize that shit is exactly what it is, it's just shit. For people who take that more seriously than the impact or the conversations or the art that you're creating, you're constantly going to be chasing that, and you're in that circle of doing that. And that whole, it's a negative circle, basically, thought circle. So you're just going down, spiral, which I was caught in for a long time. And the biggest thing that has helped me turn that corner, I think, was this past week or so. For you guys that know, there's been a bunch of artists that have come from abroad. They've been here, in particular, like Prophecy and Fateh have been here. And we haven't seen each other for a long time. And a lot of time that sometimes you spend with artists, it's kind of a hi-bye thing. You'll see each other at a show, and you might get to spend an hour talking to each other at a show. If the show is somewhere where you're both traveling to, like for example, it's abroad, and you're staying there at the same place or whatever, you might catch dinner, you might spend a little bit of time and talk to each other for a little while, catch up, and you keep it moving. And because that whole side of performances and this artistry or whatever it is, this industry, because of the past year, the pandemic, that whole side of things has been completely removed from our lives. And it's true what they say, you never know how important something is until it's out of your life. So for me, I'm not out and about at all different places and going places, and that's not really, like, for me as a person, something that I do a lot of. it's normally on the back end of doing an event or doing a show. I'll spend time with other artists, people that I know, on the back of going to an event or performing somewhere or traveling somewhere, and then linking up with people there. Because that hasn't happened for over a year or whatever, that side of things has been neglected, and I didn't realize how much of an effect that had on me. So I started reading about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know a lot of I know if you're watching the video of this, I keep scratching my moustache. I don't know why. My mustache is a little bit itchy. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So my listeners, I feel like the listeners, especially of this podcast, are quite intelligent people, and we're all kind of on a similar kind of vibe. So I'm assuming that you guys know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs are. If you don't, just a quick summary of what it is. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically a pyramid of for you to self-actualize or self-realize yourself as a human being, you have certain needs to be met. So at the bottom of the pyramid is basically, the necessities like food, shelter, water. That's one of your needs. The second one is safety. So, I can't remember what the exact order of things, but basically I think a third layer of your hierarchy of needs is sense of belonging, which is sense of community, feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, family, and all this kind of stuff. That's very, very important. Now, when I was thinking about it and reading back on it, I realized that whole part of the hierarchy of needs that I have to reach self-actualization was completely missing. My fraternity is of people in the music industry. That's what I do, and I have most of my friends and acquaintances, they're all linked to that in some sort of way. And we haven't had face-to-face meetings in such a long time. And this past weekend, I spent a lot of time with a lot of amazing people, a lot of amazing artists and people that I call friends. And the camaraderie, the laughs, the jokes, the conversations, everything that we were talking about and going through, or that we'd been through the past year or so, we had so many similarities that I realized that was my community. I'm part of this community, and that's part of my community. And it rejuvenated me like I really, really needed it, like mentally and emotionally. It was something that was missing. And we had so many amazing conversations with so many people, and I feel like everyone was kind of saying the same thing. We're all feeling that way, and we all say it. We should do it. We should do this more often. We need to do this more often, and it always is said. And sometimes it people are so busy that it can't happen that way, and it is just out of luck that you're in the same place at the same time, or you're free at the same time, and that you can spend time with each other. So during this time as well, I had all these amazing conversations, and I really, really wanted to get some of these people and these conversations recorded as part of like the podcast. Unfortunately, that wasn't able to happen this time, but I'm sure it will happen in the future. But the fact that those conversations sparked all this in me, I knew that it was something that, like this morning I woke up, I was like, okay, cool. In my head, I had a whole thing about I want to wait until I've got a guest. But I thought, let me just go back to basics and talk about, do the podcast by myself. So that's why I'm here. That's your long, convoluted explanation to what's been going on. So here we are, like, it's December 2021. There's been so much that's happened in the past couple of years. I just really want to connect with you guys a lot more again, because obviously I've been AWOL for the past 7 months. So I actually haven't checked the email folder either for the podcast. So I don't know if we've got any questions from people. So I've got an email here that I'm going to read through. It was sent in April, so that shows you like how long ago it was that people were. Also, if people are, if there's a couple of emails that were sent here that are not relevant to the podcast, they're to do with music and collaboration and stuff. That stuff is completely separate from the podcast. So if you are listening to this and you want to inquire about music stuff or shows or that kind of thing, that email address is completely separate. So please email my email address that's in my bio on Instagram. So if you are emailing the Hanji Hello podcast email address, please keep it strictly about the podcast, the Hanji Help section. If you need any help and advice, or you want to talk about anything, subjects, topics, whatever, then email that stuff over to the email address. Anything else, music-wise, is the other email address. Okay, so let me read this one. It says, hope you're doing well and staying safe. I was trying to sleep and couldn't fall asleep and somehow came across your podcast and decided to listen to it. Thank you for listening. I found it pretty inspirational, which is funny because this isn't your speciality. I don't know if that is an insult, but I'm going to take it. I don't know what that means. I found it pretty inspirational, which is funny because this isn't your speciality. I think I am. I try to be inspirational. I don't know. I don't get it. Okay. I'll be honest. I don't know much about you, but your podcast caught my attention. Okay. That's twice you've said that. So listening to it made me wonder about my own life. Okay. I'm sure this is something that's happened to most people in life. I'm fortunate God has given me a lot in life. I'm blessed with a great career, great family, friends, ambition, education, and cute. Okay. However, my love life is shit. Okay. Might as well be blunt about it. I seem to attract toxic Punjabi men. Since you are Punjabi, brackets I think, why do Punjabi men have so much pride? It would be nice to hear a guy's opinion. I mean, from someone who isn't in my circle. I think that's a pride. Okay. One, it's a generalization. Not all people of specific ethnicities are all the same. Pride. For some reason, I always think of pride or people being really proud of something. I always relate that to some sort of insecurity, especially when it's overt pride. Like being proud of who you are or where you're from, that is cool. But you know, when people go over the top and they start, shouting it from the rooftops or, trying to force it down other people's things like I'm this, I'm that. I always feel like that comes from a place of insecurity because you're insecure about what you actually are. So you overcompensate by doing the most. Attracting certain types of people, you have to start learning what the red flags are. And then when you experience a red flag early on, knowing to cut it off or have some sort of boundary. Saying that, just from what you've said, you're saying that that's what you attract, but what you attract is you probably attract loads of different types of people. If what you're saying is true, you probably attract all types of men, but maybe the ones you show attention to or that you reciprocate energy to are the ones who are toxic. So I would kind of spend some time and think about that, because a lot of times I've said this before, I don't know if I said it on this podcast, I probably did actually, I said it earlier on, but we kind of sleepwalk through life, not realizing what we're actually doing. So we repeat patterns. And the fact that you're looking back and trying to figure out why, that's a great first step. So the first step is to recognize these things, and the second step is to have some sort of action and do something about it. So recognizing it is the first one. If you're speaking to a guy and you ask him a question and he replies in a way which alerts you to him being some sort of toxic, having some sort of toxic mentality, or saying something which kind of triggers something else in you, then learn to kind of either understand more if you feel there's potential, or just accepting it for what it is and walking away. So yeah, that's my advice. You can't change I feel like sometimes when people say things like, oh, Punjabi men are like this, or Asian girls are like this, or so-and-so is like this, like, you're trying to change the foundation, like you're trying to change something which is not within your control. First of all, like, the way I see it is, you're only in control of yourself. You can only control your own actions, your own behaviors, and you can influence other people and their behaviors. You can be an example of what to do and what not to do, but you can't change people. People are who they are. They have to learn and figure that stuff out for themselves. And if someone's behaving in a toxic way towards you and you cut them off, one, you save yourself so much hassle, and two, if they reach some sort of level of understanding and self-awareness, they'll be like, okay, what did I do to do that? That maybe means that I need to change my behaviors. That's the only way that I feel like it can happen. And moving forward, again, like, when you're parents, when you have children, when you have younger people that you can influence, it's up to us to kind of impart knowledge that is, positive and non-toxic, and mentalities which are, not rooted in behaviors, especially like stupid and childish and toxic, as we've said a few times, behaviors of the past, or people that we've actually experienced in our lives. So that's when the kind of responsibility falls on us. But if someone's a grown up, there's only so much you can do. They have to kind of get to that conclusion themselves. But protect yourself. I mean, I wish you do, like, meet someone or find someone who kind of changes your perception of what you're of what you think, like Punjabi men, in your words, what you think they are like. I know a lot of amazing Punjabi men. So yeah, I would say that maybe broaden your horizons as well. Maybe it's the ones in your area, the ones in your circle, the ones where you're from. The world's a big place. Just, you'll meet people from other areas, other places, who are not as who don't behave like people that you've seen and how they behave. Okay, cool. That's today's podcast done. I'm sorry if I was waffling a little bit. I'm a little bit rusty. There's probably going to be one edit in this. Hopefully nobody notices. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next podcast. Hanji Help section is open. Please send your emails. There's some from way from the beginning that people had sent, and I'm waiting to answer those questions, because there's certain episodes that I want to do about certain topics. One specifically about grief. Someone emailed very, very early on, I think after the first episode, asking about grief and how to deal and handle grief. So that's an episode that I really, really want to get done with a friend of mine, because I feel like we'd have a great conversation about that. But yeah, guys, if you need any advice, any help, and you want me to talk about it on the podcast, it's all anonymous. Send your emails to hanjihellopodcast@gmail.com. And I will see you guys on the next. Also, oh yes, hold on, before I go. I had a show last week in Birmingham at Pizza Express Live, and I just want to say that it was one of my favorite performances, events, shows that I've ever done. And we have another one on the 22nd of December in London. The show is called a retrospective, and there's not many tickets left. It might be sold out like within the next week or so. So if you are in London on the 22nd, get your tickets, because the show is going to be, it's amazing. And the hoodie that I'm wearing, I don't know if you can, let me get up. If you're watching the video, this is Art Break hoodie, and these are like exclusively only available at the live shows, and designed by Jazz DMN on Instagram. And it's amazing. Basically, it's inspired by the Art Break album. It's really, really cool. It's got so many cool little references to the album and myself on it. And yeah, these are exclusively available. But yeah, we're launching Hanji Hello clothing in the next couple of weeks. The relaunch is happening next year. I've got a bunch of music. But yeah, all that stuff's in the works. I'm back. Hanji Hello podcast. See you guys next time.
Like this. Like this.